Welcome back to Coffee and Tea with CarrieVee. I'm CarrieVee, your biggest fan, the person who will believe in you until you can believe in yourself. This podcast is all things leadership, communication, confidence, clarity, and life. And joining us back today is Mike Sackmary. Mike is a regular on Coffee and Tea with CarrieVee, and he's got some pretty cool stuff with us to share with us today. So, Mike, welcome back to Coffee and Tea with CarrieVee.
Thanks, Carrie.
You're
It's
very
really fun to
welcome.
be back again, and I'm happy to see everybody once again.
So tell us, we're happy to see you too. Tell us what's been going on in your life over the last few months.
Oh my gosh. I last November was diagnosed with cancer,
Oh, we're
and
so sorry.
everything, yeah, everything lined up. Um, like over time in the ensuing months, I got to the right surgeon through trial and error. I got to the right hospital, etc. I happen to be a Christian, so I don't think that was coincidental. I think God was superintending for that. But
Mhm.
my point is that when you get knocked down like that so hard, it just reminded me of all the things my grandmother used to tell me. She always said, if you get knocked down 5 times, get up 6 times. No
Mm,
matter what happened in life, it was always get back up,
get back up.
figure out what you're going to do, figure out what you might have done that contributed to the problem, and don't do that again. And it was always that kind of direction. So this was by far my toughest thing I've gone through in life. And I wanted to share it a bit with people
Yeah,
because in business, we get knocked down a lot.
we
We get
sure
knocked
do.
down by people we trusted that betrayed us. We get knocked down by competition.
Yeah.
We get knocked down by government randomly deciding to shut everybody down. I mean, these things happen. You can't stop and you can't quit. And I want all the listeners to really embrace that it's not as impossible as we may think to get back up.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you get back up? How do you get back up um from being knocked down from something like cancer?
I looked at what I could do. So even in the hospital bed, can I still stretch some of my muscles? Can I
Mm,
still read? The answer was no, it hurt too bad. Could I still listen to music? No, can't really focus on what could I do was focus on the pain. So I did that. Like, okay. I picked a date when I knew that they were going to do the things that gushy bit stuff doctors do.
yes.
Not very technical. And I thought, all right, well, that's so many days out. And in the middle of that pain, as I was just laying there and I couldn't concentrate on anything else, I'm like, great, I'm going to focus on the pain, not in a whining, but in a I've got X number of hours left before this gets addressed.
Mhm.
Knowing when they're going to do the surgery and then the post-op things they were going to do a few days later, etc.
Yeah.
And even after the surgery, there was about a week's worth of severe pain because my body rejected one of the things they put in. And even that, it was like, okay, the doctor said, I have to not touch that for 7 days because this other part needs to heal first
Wow.
before I go do that. And so that's 7 days. All right, I have a finite amount of time, 7 days. So every time it hurt, I was like, great. Not great that it hurt, but great. I've got something to focus on that my brain can actually think about is
Yeah.
in 6 days and 22 and a half hours. So that's how you keep yourself going in a really tight spot. What can you do? So continuing to stretch, getting up and walk, or whatever you can do
Yeah.
physically. The worst thing if you're having a physical problem is to lay around. That's the worst. You
Yeah.
either sleep or you move something to keep your body toned or whatever you can do with yourself.
Yeah.
That helps a lot. That's the same way in business. When you've got a major problem going on, you may be panicking and saying, well, I'm the only one here. I have to fix I've got a million things to do. Well, that's all true. What you
Yeah.
absolutely can do is just say, what's the number one thing I can focus on and set a time limit. In 40 minutes, this thing will be at point X.
Mhm.
And when you get to that time limit, you stop. Work on the next thing. This keeps our brains from getting too scattered. I mean, there's a famous psychological phrase called monkey brain, which is a real thing.
Yes.
And we all do it. We're like, oh, shiny object, shiny object. It's like, don't get into thinking you have to fix everything all at once, because you'll go crazy.
Yes. Yeah, that all or nothing mindset is so destructive, and yet many of us cling to it. It's either everything or nothing, and something, even a little something, is always better than focusing on just everything at once, because then you're paralyzed in fear or indecision or procrastination. It'll stop you every time.
And a bonus tip for all the CarrieVee listeners: if you are going to be in the hospital, get some high density foam cushions. You can buy these in auto parts websites and such. They're the kind you sit on when you're doing a long drive.
Yeah.
Put those under your butt in the hospital bed.
That's really good advice.
Hospital mattresses aren't the best, and you might sink in, and the minute you do, you hit that hard plastic.
Oh.
And, over the course of a couple hours, you're like, oh my gosh, this is not a good idea.
That's so true. That is so true. Well, I mean, I am sorry. I know everybody listening is so sorry that this was your journey. Not a journey you expected. I'm sure it came
No,
from out of nowhere and hit you like a brick.
total surprise.
So what was your first reaction hearing those words? Because everybody has a different reaction. I know what mine was, but what was yours when the doctor calls and says, "Hey, got something to tell you"?
My background's all in engineering, and then followed on with a career in professional investing. So very analytical response.
Yeah.
Situation X. Okay. How do I know that the data is correct? What data does the doctor have?
Yeah.
Is it being interpreted correctly? So my brain immediately went to, let's look at this logically. And I suppose there are a number of men. I know you ladies listening probably might not believe this, but there are a number of men that will ignore their emotions.
Really?
Yeah, I know. Hard to
May or
believe.
may not have just done a video on that, so keep going.
So anyway, yeah, so the emotions are all there. I personally don't find emotions to be helpful when I'm trying to figure out a course of action.
Yeah.
Other people are very emotional decision makers, so you have to know who you are. For me, the reaction was, okay, let's subdue the fear. Go find out what we can find out, what can be done. I found out there were two real options, and then I chose what seemed like the best one, and that's just based on my instinct and gut feel. And there's times that data is helpful, and there's other times you just have to say, okay, what is my gut really telling me?
Yeah.
Because either option that I chose, which was either surgery or radiation in my case, they both have not the greatest track records over large groups of males over time. So it's like, okay. Now, specific to mine, the radiation was going to have a bunch of side effects, or probable side effects, that I did not want.
Mm-hmm.
The surgery, of course, they're cutting. So, I mean, once the bleeding and infection are taken care of, you shouldn't have any side effects from that.
Right.
So, yeah, I'll let you know in 10 years what was the right call.
Okay. We'll schedule a podcast for August 9th, 2034.
There you go.
Or August 6th. Sorry, I read it upside down. August 6th, 1934 or 2034. Whatever. You do numbers. I'll just talk words. Okay. Yep. So how did it change your life? Did it change your life, and did it change your outlook? How did it, or did it, and how, if it did?
It opened up a new area where I would love to help people. My body rejected the catheter that they put in, which they have to leave in for a week. There's no options.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a sterile catheter. There's no chemical reason why that should have happened, but it did. And the pain was so intense that I am attempting to start I call it a ministry, but you could call it whatever, with the local surgical hospital, to be to get people together that when they have patients that are in that much pain, but the patient's still coherent,
Mm-hmm.
that there's someone that can just come into the room and read to them or
What a great thing.
jokes. Now that's different than the hospital chaplains. They have a different function. But this would be more specifically that the chaplains would know, okay, we've got readers, we've got joke tellers,
Yeah.
um, and I would love to see that because I could have used that. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of an outgoing guy. I mean, I got a couple of fun nurses that would be willing to tell me silly stories. And I really appreciated the fact they would do that.
Yeah. Makes a difference. It makes a difference. And I'm excited for that, for you to start that. It is a big need. I have some time from not working in hospitals, but working in nursing homes. And I know that people who took the time to come in and just spread joy were invaluable, invaluable. So my husband and I take our dogs in to visit patients because they just seem to reduce their stress so quickly.
Yeah, that's a neat idea.
Yeah. Yep. Dress them up, take them in.
And it also changed my business focus.
How so?
Um, well, I've never run the business on terms of I need money. I mean,
Uh-huh.
obviously, we all need money.
Yeah.
I've run it on how can I help smaller companies learn how to succeed.
Yeah.
Um, so my focus changed a little bit. I still do that, but I'm also much more interested in helping people want to do more good things. Well,
Yeah.
it's always been there. It's just taken a larger position at the forefront. If a client's not really interested in helping make the world better, which is different things for different people. I don't tell them what they have to do. It's just I
Yes.
want to see some kind of motivation external to making money.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've definitely been looking more at that.
Very cool. Very cool. How else? How else has it changed it? Or has it?
It really hasn't changed much else.
Okay.
I what little bit of fear I still had left about speaking about my faith in public is completely gone now.
I bet. Yes.
It's like that's not a factor anymore. If I have a
Right.
chance to share, I'm going to share.
Yes. Yes. It does something. Anyone who has heard those words, "You have cancer," understands. Things that matter a lot, and the things that never did fall to the wayside very quickly. And most people never pick those things back up again because you have such a grasp on how precious and short this time on this earth really is. My husband and I were talking last night, and he was Googling. I don't even know why he does these things sometimes, Googling lifespan of a whale, lifespan of a pigeon. And I was working on a jigsaw puzzle and I said lifespan of a human. And so he put it in there, and Siri was giving the lifespan of humans. And for men, it was 70 years, and women, it was like 74 or 75, something like that. My husband is 62, and he just sat up and he said, "What if I only had 8 years left?" And we started talking about, so what if that really was the truth? What if he was the average?
Mhm.
And um and he started talking about all the things that wouldn't matter anymore, and I said, "Then they shouldn't matter now." Because the truth is, no matter what the average is of anything, none of us knows. It could be tomorrow. It could be today. It could be tonight. It could actually be 20 years instead of 8 years, but you don't know. So why let things that don't matter so much? Why get so anxious about things that are temporary?
Yeah, that's so important.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that I tell people. I get a lot of people asking me questions about investing.
Mhm.
And I say, what's the most important thing? What does that money need to do? And almost everybody gets this wrong because there's only one answer that really is the foundation of everything else is you want the money to last longer than you do. You don't want to be an old person that ran out of money.
Yes. Yeah. And how let's just segue then. This is a perfect segue. How do we make sure that the money doesn't run out before we do?
Now, it begins with your mindset. And part of part of adopting a correct mindset about investing is understanding that a tiny budget is not an obstacle. Now, most of us that I've watched on your show, for myself, for you, a lot of us are solopreneurs. I happen to have 3 people in my company, so I guess I'm triple the average. I'm kidding. I know that's not how math works, but
Hey, you could tell me anything about math and I would absolutely believe you. So,
it doesn't work that way. Um, yeah, investing in a tiny budget is not with a tiny budget is not obstacle, and many business owners get way wrapped up in every cent has to go back into it.
mhm.
And we tend to kind of romanticize and idealize people that have done that, such as we think, well, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak put every penny into Apple. No, they didn't. They had houses, they had jobs, they were doing other things. They weren't dumping every penny they had into Apple.
Yeah.
They were reinvesting the profits from Apple. That's different. So
Yes.
when it comes to your business, you don't want to be in a situation where you've borrowed from friends, family, enemies, your cat, your dog, everybody else, and now you every cent's in there, and you're still running this high risk scenario. That induces so much stress. It doesn't need to be there.
Yeah.
It's better from the very beginning. And for those of you already started, you can still do this now. Today's day one. This is your beginning. Write down for every dollar that comes in what the percentages are going to be. I'm going to give 2 cents to this, 3 cents to that, whatever. And don't deviate from that. No matter how big your company goes, keep those percentages in place.
Yeah.
Because by doing that over time, your mind is going to absorb it. You'll start living it. You'll start thinking that way.
Hmm.
Oh, here's the new flashy, shiny course. So the new thing I can get that's really going to make my business expand 10x, whatever. You'll hear these things from various pitch people. Your brain will say, wait a minute, my revenues this year were such amount of money, and I've got this percentage to spend on those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're not even tempted to go for the ones that aren't going to help you, because the ones that are going to help you relative to what you're bringing in are going to sound expensive to your ears.
Yeah. That is such, I'm so glad you said this. I wish that this advice I had had when I started my business, it would have kept me out of a lot of hot water and a lot of bad decisions. So this is awesome. Keep going.
So yeah, so set that expectation, and it shouldn't be more. I'm holding up my visual aid here. It shouldn't be any more than one sheet of paper. Just make it super simple. Make it so easy that as you bring people on board, you might hire a social media manager, a website person, or whatever you hire. You show them that sheet. You say, this is my breakout, and this is your line on here, and you got to stay in these numbers.
Powerful.
So as you're bringing me leads or you're bringing me clients, this percentage doesn't change, but the total number gets bigger because the revenue is getting bigger.
Mm-hmm.
You give
That's
people
so
that
good.
incentive. That will really weed out people you don't need to be working with.
That's so good. Oh man, weeding out people you don't need to be working with. We need to say that louder for the people in the back. Another hard lesson that I learned by doing that. I try to keep my clients from not making. You don't need a bad client, right?
No.
What's the saying? A bad client is far worse than no client.
Yeah, it saps your energy. You don't feel good.
Yeah.
It costs you money, and you were better off not to meet them in the first place.
This is so true. This is so good. All right. So, are you saying that some of that money even on that small budget that can be invested even if it's a tiny amount? And
Yes.
where are we investing it?
I'll talk to the general and then go to the specific.
Okay.
And if I get lost and get monkey brain, reel me in, because I do
I'll
this.
reel you in.
In the general concept, when we buy stock or a CD or a bond, we're buying a financial asset.
Yes.
It's called an asset because it's supposed to be better than keeping it in cash.
Okay.
They're not always better. The problem with CDs That's a fixed interest rate. So the good side is you know how much money you're going to get back when it matures.
Yes.
And they come in different lengths of time that they mature. And so there's the good side. The bad side is those interest rates are usually much, much less money than you can make investing in stocks over the long term.
How long is the long term?
It's at least a decade.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to quantify that because that's exactly where my brain went. So I'm sure some people's did too. What does long term mean? Okay, decade.
Any given asset, you should be thinking of what's it going to return over 10 years. Now,
Okay.
CDs typically don't go that long. So you roll, it's called rolling, but you tell whatever CD person you're buying them from, I want this to roll. I don't want that money back for 10 years. Just let it keep rolling. And you'll keep getting the interest. But interest rates go up and down.
Yes.
Because they are determined by the United States federal government, who, as we know, is incredibly efficient with their money. Yeah. So there's the risk. Now, and they're issued by banks, but that's done through the federal banking system. So the Federal Reserve Bank, run by our glorious federal government, makes these decisions. So there you go.
Got it.
The advantage is you know what you're getting back. They're not going to go to zero.
Yes.
Bonds are similar, but bonds are issued by either a municipal government, like your local town or city will issue bonds. Bonds are also issued by the same companies that sell stocks. So, for example, you can have like Apple Computer. If they issued bonds, you could buy their bonds, you could buy their stocks. And they're for different purposes. But even those kinds of bonds have a guaranteed interest rate. Usually not as high as you're going to get from investing in stocks, but it's guaranteed.
Okay.
Now, stocks are where you can make the most money over time if you know how to control your emotions and if you love doing your research. Otherwise, hire a professional who does love those things and go about your day. Just enjoy yourself.
Okay.
What a stock is part ownership in a company. So for all of us entrepreneurs, it's like if I told my brother, I want you to give me 200 grand and I'm going to give you 2% of my company. Okay. Now, from the get-go, when you buy a stock, there's a lot of other people who are owning part of that company. So your voice isn't going to be a big, like with me and my brother, it would be a very direct voice because he can show up anytime and start asking questions.
Yeah.
This is why most entrepreneurs don't want to give away sections of their company. But think about when you've got hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue and you're selling stocks. The reason the companies sell stock is to raise cash that they can use. And the secondary market, which is what most of us operate in, these are your stock exchanges. So if you work with someone like Fidelity or Vanguard or Schwab or any of these outfits, that's all secondary market. You're not buying direct from the company. You're buying from someone that wants to sell it.
Okay.
It's still ownership, but it's like someone saying, hey, I'm selling you my part ownership in this company. I'm done with it.
Yeah.
And the reason they can make a lot of money this way, and we have history going back well over 100 years on the New York Stock Exchange. And just as this is an example, on the market crash in 1929, the day before, if you had held one share of every company on the stock exchange, and it crashed the next day, and people were panic selling and jumping out of windows, we all know the history. But if you had kept those stocks, given them to your grandchildren, so here we are almost 100 years later, you would have had almost 2,000 times more money than you had that day before the crash, simply by not selling. That includes recessions, it includes wars, it includes companies that went out of business, it includes all the bad things. But over time, the good things far outweigh the bad.
So if we weigh this against what is going on right now, if you're listening to this podcast, yesterday, the stock market tumbled, and it tumbled the Friday before that as well, from what I understand. And then it tumbled yesterday again, and people are panicking. We weigh all of this against right now. What is the advice?
Don't panic.
That's hard.
I
That's hard.
know.
That's really hard.
It's really hard. This
Mhm.
is where emotional control comes in.
Okay.
Many people have the idea that if they hire a financial advisor, somebody can help them out, that person should make sure their money always goes up. That's not going to happen because assets rise and fall. And every time something is selling, like right now, a lot of people are selling, but a trade can only happen if there's a buyer on the other side. So
Okay.
people are panic selling, but people like me are buying because I'm like, I could have bought that for $20 last week, but today you're selling it to me for 10. Okay. The company hasn't changed. And this is what you have to do with in place of panic. You put in your mind, what specific companies are you looking at?
Mm-hmm.
Why are they down? Did the company mess up like CrowdStrike did a few weeks ago? Did the company mess up? Or is there a macroeconomic, governmental, societal, cultural factor going on?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it talking heads in the media inducing panic in people? Or there's a lot of or. So you kind of look at those and say, okay, what's the reality? Does the company have the same management? Are they on track to make their sales numbers? Are their expenses still staying the same? You start digging in. If nothing fundamental has changed in that company and their market has not changed, then you know that the drop in stock has nothing to do with how they're operating.
Yes.
And most big companies got big because they're very good at addressing their markets and figuring out where the next market's going to be.
Yeah.
You can't second guess them in that area because they didn't get big by not knowing this. So yeah, don't panic. Look at the factors. Why is it down? And ask yourself, what if I was on the other side of that trade? What if instead of worrying about pulling everything out, what if I bought more? So you go do your data nerd thing. And if you don't love it, it's going to drive you crazy. So get somebody else to do it. I love it. You do the data nerd thing and look at history of that company and their competitors together, put the lines on a chart and say, okay, I'll just use tech as an example because it's got hit hard.
Mm-hmm.
What's a typical drop for tech as a sector related to this recent drop? Is this recent drop unusual? Or is it just unusual because a bunch of people know it because it's happening right now?
Mm-hmm.
So when I look at tech and I say, okay, there's been more than this size drop that we just had in the past. As a group, the tech companies have dropped like this at certain times in history. Then what happened? They all went shooting straight up. Now, not within the same time frame every time. As we say, history rhymes, but it doesn't repeat.
Yes.
But you look at what's happened before, and you kind of, and this is where part of the experience and a little bit of the estimation and guesswork comes in, is what's likely to happen now.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I looked at Apple, it's down 6%. For Apple, what we call volatility is what we call the up and down movements in price.
Yeah.
Apple's been down by a lot more than that in the past. However, since I've been buying it in the early 90s, even with all the drops and problems it's had, I'm glad I never sold any. I'm glad I kept buying more.
Yeah.
So you have to look at this. Now, they have big, heavy-duty competitors that would love to take their market. So what are they doing about that? So this is how you present yourself from panicking, is just focus on things you can learn. Always read the annual newsletter or the annual letter from the CEO. Every company has an annual report required by law that they have to publish these things, and they have to make them public.
Yeah.
So there's no charge for it, but you go to their website, you read the letter. If the CEO's letter is not clear to you, what the company does, what they've messed up on the past year and how they're fixing it, if they don't address those things, keep walking.
That's
a lot
really
of CEOs like to tell you everything's wonderful and they're great and they're geniuses. It's like, yeah, that's not true in our own businesses. Why would it be true for them?
Yes. Exactly. Exactly. And how long, so let's say someone is saying, "Well, I'm pulling it all out because I'm I'm 60. Do I really want to wait 10 years for it to rebound?" What would you say to someone in a position like that? I mean, it's kind of easy to leave it in and watch it in your 20s, 30s,
Oh
40s.
yeah.
But as we get older, it's a little bit harder to see those drops. I remember in the 80s when the market crashed, my dad, I don't know if that's the right terminology, but it dropped Monday. It was
It
something.
crashed. Yeah.
It crashed. Okay, it crashed. And my dad, who was, I don't know, it was in the 80s that it did that, right? Did it do
Yep.
that after that?
Did it in the 80s, did it in the 90s, did it in the early 2000s, and it
Okay, it
will
might have
do
been
it
the
again.
90s. Might have been the
Yep.
90s because I was having kids. So my dad was pushing 60. And he did panic and he pulled everything and put it in maybe a Roth IRA. I don't remember, but I know he talked about it a lot and said he lived to be 79. My mom lived to be 85. And he said, if I had left it, the rebound would have been so good.
Mhm.
But by pulling it, not only did he lose what he lost in the crash, but he lost what he would have rebounded. And he always said, just hang on, just hang on. But it's easy to look back. What if he had died at 60? And so he just wanted to make sure that he and my mom had money. So what's the advice you give to someone who is in that kind of a situation? Like they're watching what's going on now and they're saying, I'm pulling it all, man. I'm 69 years old. I'm taking it all out. I'm just done.
Well, I say that I go back to the sheet of paper. Now, you might not be working anymore, so you still got to ask yourself, for every dollar I currently possess, how much am I going to spend on food, rent, clothing, partying, travel, whatever?
Yeah.
What percentage am I going to invest or leave invested? And within those investments, then you say, all right, I've already covered my necessities. Those are accounted for. I'm retired. My necessities are accounted for. This is other money that I don't have to use right away.
Hmm.
That's the trick to it. And that's what I say to my older clients. I'm 61. I mean, I'm doing the same thing myself.
Yeah.
I personally put a drop dead date on myself of 98 years old because I figure, hey, if I live that long, I'm going to be too old to care anymore about any.
Mine's 125, so I'm good. Keep
There you
going.
go. You're good. But that's what I tell people. It's like, let's pick a seemingly ridiculous number that you probably won't live to. But
Hmm.
if we make sure the money can last that long, we know you're covered on necessities.
Yes.
Now the rest of it, well, part of the rest of it, we want to invest. We want to leave it invested, and that it's really a mental exercise in calming down and also understanding the main thing that news media and financial press and others sell is advertising.
Hmm.
They want eyeballs to look at their stuff instead of the competition stuff. So they're always going to be in the business of stoking up emotion.
Hmm.
But emotion is an investor's worst enemy. And I can tell you some very famous investors that lost a lot of money by forgetting that fact. Isaac Newton being a prime example.
Hmm.
One of our smartest scientists ever, lost a lot of money by not remembering that simple fact. Um, so, and we have pretty good information with all the internet of if I want to learn about a company, there's almost nothing I can't find out because it's on the internet. It's public. It's not hard to get to this information. You just have to be
Yeah.
willing to dig.
Yep.
So you look at men and women who's built a good company that I like what they're doing. What's the chance they can keep doing that? Well, these are things you need to dig into.
Yeah.
So yeah, for someone who's 60 or older and they're retired and they're just not sure, if you pull it out, what's that going to feel like to you? And what's it going to feel like in 5 years, 10 years? And what if you're wrong? What if you pull it out and it starts climbing like crazy and you
Right.
try to jump back in, but you're jumping back in on an upslope, which is always a bad idea, in my
Yes.
opinion, because upslopes go so fast that you trying to catch them it's like trying to surf off Hawaii. Good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's people
Yeah.
that can do it, but I don't recommend that we all go try it.
Yes.
Those waves are pretty big. You don't try to catch those up slopes when they're climbing super fast. A lot of people try it, and I make money off those people, so good for you. And remember, if you're panic selling because you think you have to get out of the market is not homogenous. It's composed of different sectors. Sectors are
Mhm.
types of companies like energy companies, gas companies, food companies. One sector will climb while another one's not climbing at all. So I wonder how many of your listeners, and you get a free bonus from me if you can answer this question and post it below where Carrie puts this podcast.
Okay.
Right out your answer to this question, folks. We all know that tech dropped big. What sector went up last week? Went up big. Media didn't tell you that.
No, they didn't, did they?
No, they didn't.
Huh. Okay, so when we're done recording, you have to give me the answer, okay? Yeah, I remember, well, watching the news the other night, I even turned to my husband and said, "Remember, they're not gonna give you anything that's positive. That's not what
No,
sells. They're
right.
not going to give you anything positive." So, how often, let's say you hire a financial advisor, how often should you be pulling your statement and looking at everything?
So depending how they operate, you should ask them how often do they produce a statement?
Mhm.
What does the statement contain?
Okay.
And then ask for a couple sample newsletters or sample statements they've sent out in the past. Now, they're not going to give you somebody's account, but they can give you theirs.
Yes.
You should always ask for theirs. I want to see the one on your personal account, how you're doing.
Okay.
They won't give you that. You just say, no, I'm not in it. Keep walking.
Okay.
And I mean, they're not necessarily going to give you every detail, and they shouldn't. I mean, but they'll give you enough idea what they're doing for themselves, because
Yeah.
if you don't like what they're doing for themselves, you're sure not going to like what they do for you. Um, so in my case, I put them out. I put the newsletter out about 4 times a year because it's about 15 to 20 pages. It's not a joke newsletter. It's pretty
Yeah.
serious. Um, and I do statements once a month.
Okay.
Except for my people that don't need to see those. And you learn this over time about yourself. How often should you be looking?
Yes. That
Now,
that is my question. If those statements
yes,
are available every single month, should you be looking every single month? In your
I,
opinion?
I think so.
Okay.
And there's two things you want to look at right away. The first is there'll be two columns. One will say year to date performance, and one will
Right.
say this month.
Yes.
Okay, those you kind of keep an eye on them, but don't really worry about them because we know things are going to fluctuate.
Right.
What you look at right under that line is transactions, transaction costs this month. Pay attention to that. What are they charging you? How many trades did they make? What did that cost you?
Okay.
That number should be pretty low
Okay.
unless you've had a big movement of money. Like, for example, if someone says, well, I want to convert my IRA to a Roth IRA, there's
Mhm.
going to be a big number in transaction costs because that's the federal government taking taxes.
Right.
But pay attention to those transaction costs. They should be pretty low every month. And if they're not, ask why.
Okay.
What's
That's good.
driving this cost right here?
Okay.
Um, the beauty of the internet, trading is so fast, it's so cheap now that's how we get those costs down. We no longer have to have people actually doing the trade physically in New York City, running around with tickets like they used to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, you look at that and know yourself. If you're looking at it monthly and you're just like keep thinking, I don't like this, then tell your advisor, listen, can you just send me that twice a year or once a year?
Okay. Good to know. That's good to know. This is all incredibly helpful. I can't believe how fast our time has gone. Um, for someone who doesn't understand the stock market or how any of this works, you bring it down to a level that is very easy to understand and grasp. If I can grasp it, anybody listening can grasp it. Anybody can, because this has always been foreign to me and I've always avoided it. I didn't want to talk about money, just here's my stuff, go invest it and I'll see you when I'm 80 kind of thing, which is not a good attitude to have.
No.
Not at all. And so I have learned so much from listening to you and from taking that advice and changing my mindset towards that money. I grew up in a household where women were not put down, but my dad handled the finances, and so that's
Mm.
really what I saw. And my mom just was kind of along for the ride. And when she was, when she lived with us, she really had no idea what her assets were. And we helped. I mean, we both helped her, but I helped her mainly get all of that into order. And I learned so much. That's when I really started digging into what does all of this mean, and finding out that she had been so taken advantage of by her financial advisor previous to living with us. Just he had let the ball drop on so many things, and being able to help her turn that around was such a joy. And she was very unattached to it. She kind of continued that mindset of being unattached to money. And I saw the danger of that, especially after my dad died, and realizing I really needed to take a step into understanding what is going on. Because I mean, my goal, Mike, is to never retire. I never want to retire. I love what I do. I
Yeah.
just want to keep building it. But I've also, like you heard the words, you have cancer. And so I never know when or if. I mean, I also have a genetic disorder that we found out after my cancer diagnosis. So the chance of me getting cancer again is pretty high. I don't accept that in my life. I don't dwell on that, but the facts are there. And so when or if I hear those words again, is it going to put me on a 2.5 year not being able to work much again? And if that happens again, I want to be much more prepared for that.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
these conversations have to happen, even though they make my stomach turn. Literally, my stomach churns. And every time you talk about money, my stomach churns. But I know I have to listen. And I know there's a lot of us who are listening or watching who are the same way, because it seems so hard and so foreign, and we don't know what we're doing. So we would just rather do nothing and avoid it. But we have to plan. Even the Bible says to store it up, because you don't know. We
Yeah.
we don't know when another famine will hit. We don't know when a recession will come. Do you think there is a recession coming, Mike?
Oh, absolutely. I will live through.
That's not the answer we want.
I'll live through several more recessions,
Yeah.
several more huge upswings. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It is the reality. It is the
that's the
reality.
reality. It's going to happen at some point.
I get that. I get that. And I know people are scared because we're paying so much for groceries
Mhm.
and cars and housing. It feels insane. And I know people are waiting for that to turn around. Do you think that'll turn around in some
Well,
way?
what happens with any business, and all of you listening know this from your own business,
Mhm.
your market determines what price you can charge.
Yeah.
So if prices get too high, companies have to adapt. They will either make a different product, they will find a way to make the product cheaper for the market, or they will invent something else entirely. I'll take the business in a totally different direction, but they'll do one of those three things.
Yeah.
And we saw this with Ford and General Motors pickup trucks recently. I mean, a lot of pickup trucks that I see on dealers' lots are $100,000 pickup trucks. That's
Yes.
not why we buy a pickup truck. I mean, that is not what a pickup. That's not what it's for. So that will change in some fashion. What fashion, we don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting you use that example. My husband actually has a Ford pickup truck that he bought in, I think, the fall of 2021. And every time he takes it in to get it serviced, they leave a sticker on it on how bad they want to buy this truck, because it's
Right.
very low mileage, very, very low mileage. And he got it before that upswing in those costs, and they want that car so bad. They want that truck so bad, that vehicle. And it's interesting to me to watch. I mean, he just laughs and is like, no.
Oh,
I waited my whole life for this car. No. And but yet driving past the lot and seeing a comparable truck to what it is now, and it blows my mind. But it also blows my mind when I buy strawberries and blueberries and I can't leave the store for less than $15. It just I don't understand. And it does make me scared. Like, what does my future look like? Am I gonna just not eat fruit ever again? That's where my
And
mind goes.
this is one of the problems with a fixed asset like a CD or a bond that gives a guaranteed interest rate. You can get in a situation where inflation rises much faster than an interest rate. So if the CD is paying you 5%, which right now is a good rate, that's about what you can get. But inflation's at 12%. You're not only not able to buy the same kind of stuff you used to buy, you're losing money.
Mm.
The difference between the inflation rate and your interest rate is how much percentage you're losing every year.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Keeping money in CD is a cash instrument, bond is a cash instrument.
Right.
So when we say cash, that's what we're talking about. When you keep money in cash like that, inflation is always a risk. So yes, you want a mixed portfolio. You want some cash in the bank that you can spend right now. You want cash instruments. You want some stocks. You want a mixture. But just panic selling it's great for the people that are buying.
Yeah.
But do you do that in your own business, folks? I mean, is there ever a time when you take all your assets, all your cool stuff, and just have a fire sale at 10% of your normal price? You don't do that.
No,
You either
honestly,
give something free to specific people, or like I said a minute ago, I have a free thing I'll send people that comment on this podcast. I'm not giving that to everybody, and neither are you. So why would you do that with your stocks?
good point. This has been so informative, Mike, and thank you so much for sharing all this with us. You'll be back again and we'll talk more
Yay!
about more things. So let's go with our questions. What is your superpower?
My superpower is making people feel joyful about their investments.
I love that.
I love doing that for people. And if I'm not your jam or your personality, that's fine, but that's what I do for my clients. I make them feel happy that they're letting me do things.
I love that. I love it. And how about a writing prompt for us?
My writing prompt is I always have to come up with something fun for this show because this is a fun show.
It is fun.
My writing prompt is I want you in your journal for the next 7 days. There's your homework. Write in the prompt, how much is in my investing jar?
Ooh,
at the end of 7 days, you should have that percentage figured out within a week on your paper. Every time I have $1, how much percentage am I going to invest?
Okay.
And there's your first line on your paper. So I've already given you the start on your homework.
Fabulous. Fabulous. And how can we find you, Mike? How can we find you? Can we send our answer of what stock was doing great last week? Where can we send that?
Yeah, the sector. So it's first call, like the first phone call, first call at companysaviors.com.
Okay.
And just that email goes straight to me.
Okay.
And and if you send me an email, I'll also send you a sample of the quarterly newsletter I do.
All right.
So
fabulous.
you can see, what does this guy actually write?
That sounds great. And I will link that underneath this video or underneath the podcast if you're listening to it. So you can just click that link and email Mike your answer. You get free stuff. So Google it. Google it. He doesn't care if you Google it. Just tell him.
I don't care if you Google it. I love it when people do their research.
And let him know so that he can help you if you are like me, where money just makes your stomach hurt and thinking about this makes your head hurt. This is the man to tap into. So, Mike, thank you so much for joining us today on Coffee and Tea with CarrieVee. I'm so glad you are feeling better, that you are here, that you are continuing your journey, and I look forward to seeing you again.
Well, thanks, Carrie. I absolutely love this show.
Thank you.